All right, good morning, everybody, and here we are with part 4 on coffee and questions of this trailer restoration. And I left up the same picture. This is a picture I took, like I said, when I was out buying it. And I'm going to talk about two things in part 4 here. One is the bed of it and what I did to clean it up and redo it. And the other is a tailgate and the damage that it had. In the first video I told you it shifted to the right, and the pins, they took the pins in a vise or something and they bent them so that they could drop them through the holes and lock the gate in place. And it was really stubborn, really hard to pull the pins out. And anyway, that's just what they did in the way that it was when I got it. So I'm going to change the picture. I'll show you the ones where now it's going to be at home in my driveway. And I'll go through each picture, and I blew up some of them so you can see, what the damage was and then, what I did to repair it. So I'm going to go ahead and change the picture, and we'll get into the discussion on the tools that I used and the approach that I took and what I did to correct the bed of this and the tailgate. So here we go. I'll change the picture. No long intros. Let's get right to it. Okay, so this is the right side in the back, and you can see where this thing's you can see where those holes are, where it's a little out of whack. And I didn't really know how to approach this or what to do about it. And when I lowered it, I took the pins out, I lowered the gate, and I could see there's 3 pins, that go across. You'll see the bottom here is one of them, where there's a little piece of round steel there. And that's one of the pins that's welded to the trailer. And then, like I said, the other one is welded to the gate. So what I did is I took a sledgehammer and I banged it, and you can see we're here where somebody's done it before in the past, and it's all dented in on that lower bottom part. And I hit it, and I noticed it would slide a little bit. So then I went over and I got PB Blaster, and I got some oil, and I lubricated the daylights with both PB Blaster and oil on all of the pins, and I soaked them, and I just let them sit there like that for a period of time, probably at least a few hours. So after a few hours, I came back to it, and I went over to the other side, and I hit it in the bottom here, on the very bottom far right. I hit it with a sledgehammer here. I went over to the left. I did the same thing. And this whole thing started to move to some degree. And I thought, okay, well, maybe that's the way I can correct this. So I came back to the right side because it had shifted more to the right, and I started to bang it. And after about 3 or 4, decent hits with a sledgehammer, this whole gate slid to the left, and that recorrected the alignment part of these holes up here where that pin drops through. And I thought, well, gee, that's a lot better than I thought it was going to be, because I thought I'd have to heat these pins up or do something, more drastic to free it. And I'm glad, because I almost thought I would have to cut the pins free, and redo them or something, and then, re-weld them on. So I didn't have to. That was the good news. So I just cleaned the pins up, the best I could. I used a drill, with a wire wheel on it, and I cleaned up the pins the best that I could, and I lubricated the hell out of them. And this thing now goes up and down real smoothly. Pin holes line up, and these pins, you can see here's a piece of rebar. What they did when they originally made these pins is they took like a nut and they put it on top of a piece of rebar, and then they filled it with weld and welded it up, and then they welded the chain to the top of it. So the other side was kind of missing one, and it was like just a piece of steel that somebody put in there. So I took another piece of rebar. I did the exact same thing that you see here on the right. I made another one for the left. I just took another nut, put it on top of the rebar. I cut it to the same length as this one, and I welded the chain on top of that when it was done, and then welded it to the side of the trailer, just like you see here in the picture. So that fixed that, and this whole thing now goes up and down, like I said, nice and smoothly and easily. Then I turned around with that 4.5-inch angle grinder, and I'll show you what I used here to clean it up, because some of these areas back here were rusted lightly, and some of them were rusted real bad. Okay, so before I show you what I used, this is the other side. The left side, this is where I replaced it with another piece of rebar with the welded nut, with the new chain. And it was missing over here totally. This is the way that it looked before I made the new one and I put it in place. Okay, so what did I use? Well, what I started to use at first is I got out my wheels that I went out to the store and bought. That's the picture here on the upper right I just put up. And you'll see the one over here on the far left. This is a Milwaukee, but this is a real fine kind of a wire wheel. And that one in the middle made by Master Mechanic, that's a super coarse one. Now, the super coarse one, of course, is going to work better for me on this trailer, especially in the areas that are rusted really bad. And the one over here on the far right is a brand new one that I use as a backup in case the other one I ruin it or what have you, and I have ruined them in the past. So you can end up pressing too hard with these. My advice to you is what I use my 4.5-inch angle grinder, and it's right here. I'll show you a picture of it real quick. This is my Milwaukee 4.5-inch angle grinder, and right now it's got a sanding disc on there, which worked well for me on all the rails and everything and getting them ready for painting because it was light surface rust. Okay, so when it comes to a lot more of this where it's super rusted and there's areas where I thought, I don't know if it's damaged or not, but it was rusted real heavily, I use the extra coarse wheel, like the one in the middle here that's made by the Master Mechanic. And that cleans up all of this real nice. Just don't press hard on it. I did on another one that I had. And what it does is it starts to flatten out those wires, and it doesn't work that well. It'll work in kind of a half-ass way. So the more you let the tool do the work and you don't press down on this, the longevity of what you're using, especially in these wire wheels, will last you a lot longer. That's what I used. So now let's move on to the bed itself, and then we'll bounce back and forth with questions. Okay, so let's start with this. This is one of the pictures in the beginning. It's not showing you the work I've done so far like some of the other videos, but this gives you an idea of how rusted out that bed was that's in this trailer. And it's not rusted through anywhere because this is a pretty decent thickness in this diamond plate, but it had a lot of surface rust on there. So I had a friend over and he's like, well, what you ought to do is just acid wash it. And I'm like, no, I don't want to do that. I did that before in the past on something I was restoring. It eats on the concrete of the driveway. So, I'm not going to do that, and I'm not going to get everything wet. And I know it's probably possible and it's probably easier, but that wasn't the choice that I made. What I did is in the previous picture, I used the 4.5-inch angle grinder with that coarse cup disc. So his thing was, well, man, it's going to take you forever sitting in there doing that. And I'm like, well, no, I'm just going to put on a good mask and I'm just going to sit in there and let's just see how it goes. And actually, I don't think it took me an hour. That coarse cupped wire wheel on my Milwaukee, and when you touch it to this, it just took that rust off in a second. And so the nice part about doing that is I was able, in like a detailed kind of a way, to really lift off a lot of stuff that was stuck on there and just a lot of debris and a lot of crap. Now you'll see these D-rings in the front, and I've got two in the very back where that steel is still laying in there. And those are all funky and they were sticking and all kinds of weird issues, but they were still in good shape and they were intact. So then I switched over to my drill with a little wire wheel and I cleaned all those up. So I got the whole inside of this, pretty, let's call it derusted, and I got a nice, rough surface on there and ready to apply the Herculiner. So this is what I bought, and give me just a sec to throw up a picture and I'll explain to you the deal that I got from out at Pep Boys. Okay, so what I did is I saw an ad out at Pep Boys where they were running a sale on Herculiner, and they had it online. I think I did a video about it just a short time back. So you can get it for $60 a gallon. Now that's a damn good deal because it does usually sell for $90 like it shows you here in the picture. So I went out to Pep Boys and I thought, I'm not sure how much I'm going to need. So I went ahead and I bought 3 of these just in case. And I figured worst case scenario, I have to return them, not a big deal. This is what I used as Herculiner. Now, let me shrink this down and let's talk about the Herculiner for a minute before we go forward with the photos. Okay, so I bought the Herculiner, and inside of this box, you got the can of Herculiner, you have a Scotch-Brite pad, that's that green one laying on the truck bed. They give you a small chip brush. It's not shown here in the picture because I had already used it. It's probably about an inch and a half wide. And you get that foam roller and that little handle that it's on. And that's about it. And so I got out this old paint tray, and the one thing that you want to do, you want to make sure you wear some kind of gloves. So pick up some nitrile gloves from, Harbor Freight, Home Depot or something. You don't want to do this without gloves. This stuff, when it sticks to you, it's a son of a gun to get off. It really is. I don't care what you use. Turpentine, mineral spirits, whatever, you'll eventually start to get it off, and it'll still stain you for a little bit. So best advice, get gloves. Okay, now the second thing that you need to be aware of is it comes with like a stir stick, and that's there for a reason. I had a friend say, just open it up and use it. No, you don't. You open it up and you stir this. There's a lot of it that settles, towards the bottom, so you stir the heck out of it. Now, if you recap it and you go to use it again the next day, you want to stir it again. So make sure that you stir it, wear the gloves, and then you're pretty much in good shape. So once I had this thing with the wire wheel derusted, I washed it off with water. I let it dry real good. And I got in here, and you're going to see this is the first coat. And then I went around, I did all of the sides. You can see up here where I prepped the metal, I wiped it with acetone, and I painted it white. And I got overspray all over that first coat of black Herculiner, but that's okay because I knew I was going to put a second coat on there. And I'll show you the pictures here in a minute. So with the Herculiner, you're going to take your time. Now, that pad, that rolling pad that they give you with it actually works pretty well. Now, you don't have to use it. You could have brushed it on or used some other roller. But this foam roller that they give you, it's like a real coarse foam roller, and it works real good. But it's only going to work for that one application that you're doing. Then you're going to have to go buy more. So I made sure that this thing was all ready to go, and it took me probably 30, 45 minutes to put the first coat on. I just dumped the Herculiner in the paint tray, and I just sat in there between the brush and that roller, and I went from front to back with that first coat. So let's change the picture, and I'll show you the others, and we'll go from there. Okay, and here's a picture looking at it, from the front down, and it's got the second coat on there, and the D-rings and everything. I mean, they're in good shape now. Everything's looking real clean. Got the spare tire on, got the box fixed except for a couple imperfections. And when I'm doing this, I wasn't too worried. Like I said, if you work on it for a long enough period of time, you're bound to miss a couple of spots here and there where you didn't sand it right or there's a little hiccup. No big deal. It's the first coat on the white paint. I can go back over. I can, use my angle grinder. I can touch it up with the flat wheels, repaint it, walk around it, make sure everything's looking good. So in this picture, this is, like I said, from the front to the back. Let me change it and I'll show you a few others. Okay, now here's the side. Now what I have not done yet, you'll see it all has been painted. 2 coats of Herculiner on there. Everything's looking good. Spare tire, all this. You'll see that box in the very front. I've got some work to do on the very back. You'll see that little chip up there. Now look at the fender wells here, and you'll see, if you look real close between those 2 tires, you'll see those tack welds I put on. I'm going to have to take these off, which I'll do. I don't have to, but I mean, it's just going to make it look nicer. I'll take the wheels off. I'll clean this area up in here. I'll wash it, just soap and water. I'll get it clean. Then I'm going to go over it with my random orbital sander and about 100, anywhere between 80 and 100, 120 grit. I'll lightly sand it, and I'll give it the surface some grab for the next coat of paint. I'll touch up those spot weld areas with my 4.5-inch angle grinder and a flap disc, probably about 80 grit. If you got 60, it'll work. If you got 40, it'll work. It just happens to be I've got 80 on it. It's good enough, especially for these small tack welds. I'll touch everything up, make it look good, and I'll shoot the hole underneath side of this with that Rust-Oleum 2x gloss white. And that'll take care of this, and I'll go do the other on the opposite side. I'm also going to do a video. I'm going to repack the wheel bearings, and we're going to do the wiring harness. That'll probably be on the next one. But let me show you a couple more pictures, and then we'll wrap this one up. Okay, so this is showing it to you from the back, forward. And you'll see where I temporarily, I haven't wired it yet, but I temporarily put on the new trailer lights. Now, I bought a trailer light kit out at Pep Boys while I was out there because I went out and returned that Herculiner that I did not use to get the credit put back on my credit card, and I turned around and I thought, you know what, it's looking pretty good. I don't want those dingy old lights anyway, so the kit was like 25 bucks. So I went ahead and I bought the kit. Comes with a wiring harness and everything. We'll go over that in probably the next video. But back to the tailgate here. Goes up and down. It was all derusted, lightly, just sanded it, just really hit it very lightly just to give it, like I said, the surface some grab. I resprayed it. I mean, looking pretty good. It goes up and down easy. I got the pins welded to both sides, just kind of the way I described it to you, by putting a nut on rebar and welding it all up, and you'll see the chain, and everything's looking good here. Okay, so this is the last photo, kind of showing you like dead on from the back of it with the tailgate down. And all this has been derusted, all of it's been repainted, Herculiner 2 coats, and all of that. So now the question becomes, I mean, you know, what am I going to do next? Well, I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to do the wiring harness. Like I said, there'll be another video, and I'll go around and I will touch up everything, and I'll redo and repack the wheel bearings, or redo them if necessary and repack them at the least. And I'll put that in that last video too. So probably one more video, show you the completion of the trailer. But that's it for this. I mean, this turned out real well so far. You know, I'm not into it for that much. In the next video, we'll go over the costs of it too. But, you know, if you buy it right and you got yourself a little bit of latitude there, you can actually make these pretty much the way you want them. Like I said, you got to buy it right to begin with. That gives you the leeway, I mean, in fixing this up correctly and buying all the correct things for it. You'll see over here on the left, I replaced the chain. Actually, I replaced the chain on both sides with a little bit sturdier chain that I had already. There was nothing wrong with the one that was on the right. I could have just replicated what was on the left, but I chose to put new chain on there, and I'll spray paint them white. I got to do a little bit better job on the painting. I just kind of missed it over them for right now. So I got some touch-up painting and some little things to do, and we will be wrapping up the project. Okay, I'm the Home Handyman. I hope you enjoyed the trailer restoration project so far, and I look forward to seeing you on the next video. I hope you give me a thumbs up and click subscribe, and if you got any questions, you know, give me a holler. And I'll talk to you on the next video. You folks have a great day. I'll see you again soon. Bye-bye.